Anytime we track severe weather hitting a large portion of the country, one of the top questions is the federal response to such an event. David Spunt with this piece.
I look for the fastest flight out and just try and get ahead of the storm.
From the air,
weather can be unpredictable.
To the ground, this weekend is shaping up to be a headache for tens of millions in the storm's path.
That will lead to whatever slush that melted over the course of the previous day to turn into ice that night. And that's obviously incredibly problematic for traveling.
The weather expected to dump around a foot of snow in the nation's capital.
Cold weather like this mixed with precipitation puts people in a lot of danger.
The federal government also coordinating closely with states.
The big thing is, stay home, have supplies, and be ready.
Officials in Georgia preparing for significant amounts of ice, but help may not be instant.
We want to make sure that everyone is being safe. If there are trees down along a road, if it's incredibly icy, we may not be able to go out.
The storm expected to affect millions all the way from Maine south to Texas.
With it being a sustained event, that doesn't mean that there might not be hazardous travel conditions throughout the duration of the storm.
Grocery store shelves in Tennessee emptying and quickly. And people are fueling up with propane in South Carolina.
It's going to be the Black Friday of storm prep.
Yeah.
Over the course of the past 2 days, I think I've answered at least 350 phone calls about generators, propane, ice melt, gas cans.
Nearly 20 governors have declared a state of emergency, and that number could increase depending on the conditions. At Reagan National Airport, David Spunt, Fox News.
Okay, we're going to continue to track these winter weather conditions all night and into the weekend. A live look at our XRAD weather monitoring system. Let's bring in former FEMA coordinator Mark Neveau. He's here to explain what this kind of system requires from the government and what families should be doing right now. Mark, with this storm's footprint stretching across dozens of states, emergency managers are going to have to decide where consequences could cascade fastest. What should be the top priority in the first 24 hours of a multi-region winter event like this?
What they've been doing is coordinating amongst local and state, having conference calls with FEMA and different departments and agencies trying to pre-plan what's to take place here. They've pre-positioned resources that are coming from different distribution centers across the country. And so those distribution centers have like cots and waters and meals and roofing materials, things of that nature. And so those are ready to go for whichever state calls for that. When we talk about prioritization for the local officials, state and local, being your county or city managers, what they're looking for is they want to make sure their infrastructure is up and operable. And they also want to make sure, as you're seeing taking place, messaging to folks to let them know how dangerous this is and that you're going to have to kind of be on your own for a period of time if something happens. So prepare now.
Ultimately, forecasters are warning that ice may be as big a threat as snow in some areas, especially where trees and power lines are vulnerable. What makes ice events challenging to prepare for compared to a pure snowstorm?
Yeah, good question. Well, number one, the roads, right? The roads become a challenge for people trying to traverse on their day-to-day, and whether going to work, picking up the kids, things like that. So that's a problem. You got to clear certain highway routes. Our society operates on a just-in-time inventory system. So most grocery stores, gas stations, they don't stock a tremendous amount of commodity because they anticipate that to be replenished within, 48 hours, 72 hours. So if there's ice on the ground, it's difficult to make sure those commodities can continue in that just in time. That's number one. Number two is the weight of the ice, which sounds kind of crazy. But if you look at a normal electrical wire span outside your house, it's about 300 feet. And a half inch of ice on those lines can put 500 pounds of extra weight on that electrical wire. So what that does is it causes it to droop, to either break or disconnect from its coupling. The poles fall over, they knock into somebody's houses, or they block roads. So the ice component adds the weight not only to the trees and lines, but certainly to people's roofs. Creates a much heavier load than just strictly snow.
You know, many governors, and we just had Governor Wes Moore of Maryland on the air moments ago, many governors are issuing states of emergency ahead of the worst of the conditions, something we often see during events like this. We know that this can unlock resources, it can change how agencies operate, but what is the practical value of declaring an emergency early on in a storm like this?
Well, what it does do, it starts to, it signifies to folks within their organization, the emergency management department, the state governments, the local government departments and employees, that we've got something coming that's very dangerous and we want you to focus on it. That's kind of the indirect implication. But it also allows contracting. In other words, if they need contractors to provide sand for sandbags or fuel for their trucks, that they can shorten that time frame and do emergency contracting. It is also the first step in having the federal government declare a presidential disaster declaration. That doesn't always happen, and basically those are declared by the president through the FEMA chain when the resources of the state there are not enough of them to be able to support the efforts that are taking place. So they need help from the federal government. That's a first step. Local state emergency disaster declaration, first step in getting a federal declaration.
We've been seeing widespread travel disruptions already. We're seeing flight cancellations. Highway conditions can change by the hour. Mark, what message do you have for people that are debating whether to travel?
If they can, what I'd suggest is think about the time frame. What we're talking about is a storm over the next 2 or 3 days that could impact 140 million people in our country. If your travel over the next 72 hours is such that you can postpone that travel, or you can take maybe an alternate route of some sort, meaning mass transportation if it's running, that's the way to go. We want you to kind of stay home, hunker down, make sure that you've got the necessary supplies, and try and make it, if you will, a fun time with your family. Try not to go out if you can avoid it.
And certainly, we're going to be keeping an eye on the nation's airports, as we see from this map here. I mean, my goodness, it's a pretty large portion of the country and many, many airline hubs that are going to be impacted by this stuff. Let's talk about some of the conditions on the ground in some of the harder hit areas. Are power outages in general the most life-threatening piece of a winter storm typically?
Yeah, you've got it, Austin. That's the largest component is electricity. From a federal standpoint and emergency management professional standpoint, whether you're at the local, state, or federal level, we're trying to get that infrastructure back up and operating. That's use your electricity, your power, your water. When we talk about ice storms, not only are we talking about electrical outages, but that cascades down to people not having heat, lighting in their homes. It's nice to have generators, but keep in mind that that generator is only going to operate for 1 or 2 homes. When we talk about a large swath of area like neighborhoods or city blocks that are out, that one generator is not going to be adequate. You've got to get the electrical company in there, get that service restored as quickly as possible. That's number one. The second one is water. In 2021 in the state of Texas, we all know that they hit an ice storm, a pretty nasty one. It was the most expensive natural disaster for insurances and government because of the broken pipes. In a lot of parts of our country, they're not designed. The homes, the businesses are not designed for inclement weather like this. So what happens is the pipes freeze. When that happens, it ruptures the pipes in homes and different areas, hotels. Not so much in hospitals because they've got emergency generators to run, some of their heating HVAC systems. But what happens when the pipes break? A number of things. Certainly, you damage your home from the water. But also what happens is it drops pressure in the entire system. So now you've got challenges with fire protection in certain areas of your city because the automatic sprinklers in the ceiling might not have pressure to pump. So it's a twofold. It's the electricity along with the broken pipes.
So after storms like this, we often hear frustration that warnings were either ignored or they weren't clear enough. What's the most common communication failure that you've seen in winter emergencies?
Not taking it serious enough. We've gotten very good at utilizing that little thing that we carry around on our hip or in our hand, our cell phone. And we now can, pretty much geographically pick out where we want to send emergency notifications to citizens and let them know that this is a very serious, critical incident. So in terms of notification, we're pretty good about getting that out. It's that people sometimes like, well, I don't feel, we had this notification before. It's not going to be that serious. It won't impact me. I think I can weather it. No pun intended. But take it serious. And the aside to that is that, it's a little bit of inconvenience for, 24 to 72 hours. You'll be back to your normal operation. Don't compound it, which is key. Take it serious.
In your opinion, what sort of investment from the federal level would most help prepare for storms like this in the future?
Yeah, we're talking about mitigation measures, really. And when we talk about, preparedness is kind of the key word that government officials talk about. Really, that's about trying to do things, take measures ahead of time to either avoid or minimize the impacts. When we're talking about an ice storm, we certainly, and the power companies, honestly, they have one of the best mutual aid systems, bar none, in our country. We talk about firefighters moving across state lines when there's wildfires, which they're kind of, known for being so good at. Secondary to the fire service is the power companies. Being able to have other power companies provide trucks, personnel, and they're already on standby in other states to come help out. So to be able to get those lines back up and operating. From a preparedness standpoint for people, it's just making sure you got enough food and water. If you're thinking about heat, maybe firewood or something, if the power goes out for a period of time, can we hunker down? Do we have the candles we need? Do we have our medication? Things of that nature.
We appreciate you, Mark. Thank you.